Well, that was interesting. Now, just as a heads up, I've got something dropping on June 19th for you guys that I think you're really going to enjoy, and it'll actually help with your study when it comes to defending the faith. Continuing on with our discussion with GoodTimes, there was a very interesting shift that kind of took place here. Yes, the first part of this got a little bit hot and heavy, for lack of a better term, but it actually turned out all right in the end. One of my major frustrations with GoodTimes is that he just says the same things over and over and over again. I've mentioned in a previous video that he just seems to have the memory of a goldfish when it comes to, well, just bringing up the same topics over and over and over again on a Latter-day Saint Live.
I think what I'm reading here is it says Clement was probably ordained at between 92 and 101 AD.
Probably is good enough for me.
That's I don't know. It's just, I get what you're saying. Okay, so the first bishop of Rome. So I'm going to go to barterman.org. He has a whole thing right here on it. Let's see. Peter is best known as the first bishop of Rome. In the period I'm interested in it is for this book. However, little evidence support this view. On the contrary, several authors indicate that Peter was not the first leader of the church there, and certainly it's not the first bishop. There are some traditions, however, that connect him with the Rome church long after it had been established. Before examining this tradition, let me skip down real quick. Church history 2. 2nd century author Clement of Alexandria indicates that it was James who was the first bishop of Jerusalem. Correct. Eusebius, Church History, chapter 2. Okay, hold on. Maybe I missed something here. I should reiterate that there were other churches outside of Rome that claimed a special connection with Peter. His importance to such churches is no mystery. If Peter was Jesus' chief disciple and the first to affirm his resurrection, then any church that could claim him as their own would obviously improve its status in the eyes of the Christian world at the large. The church in Jerusalem itself could certainly make such a claim, as it is clear that in the beginning months of the church, soon after Jesus' death, it was Peter who took charge and began the mission to convert others to the faith of Jesus. So 20 years later, the Apostle Paul could still speak of Peter as one of the pillars, but along with Peter, James, and John in Jerusalem, after John, the son of Zebedee, and James, the brother of Jesus, it becomes clear that the range of sources, including Paul himself, Galatians 2:12, James eventually to take over the leadership of the church in Jerusalem, possibly as Peter pursued his mission to convert Jews in other places. 2nd century author Clement. Okay, I didn't miss much then. I thought I missed something. Large city of Antioch. Paul, yada, Christians.
Yeah, I like Henry. Like I don't debate like that. Tertullian said, what I said, which is that Clement was ordained by Peter.
No, I think this is what I'm trying to find here is this is a blog post saying where Bart Ehrman's basically talking about the messy succession of Catholicism's claims, and it gets into more than just Tertullian. It gets into why the reasons the Shepherd of Hermas was once revered versus why it was later not revered when it comes to the Epistle of Barnabas. He ties the Epistle of Barnabas, Shepherd of Hermas, into why they were so important for this succession argument and stuff like that, but wasn't held by every church, which is probably why there's a split. But go ahead. Yeah, I'm going to read real quick. I'm listening.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if there's another church father that says that Clement came directly after Peter, I would love to see that, because I think the better reading here is that the Greek or the Latin that was written by Tertullian is not indicating direct succession, but rather the line of Peter, the successor of Peter. And also, just to add one comment here, the reason I'm not coming up here to harp on a subject that we've already, cleanly agreed upon. Okay, what's with the laughing, dude? Just chill.
Well, the thing is that we've gone over.
Yeah, but Lion. The reason I come up is because we haven't settled anything, and this underlies the entire debate between Mormonism and
I'm not trying to harp on anything.
Catholicism.
You want to come up and talk about the same thing.
Here's
every
the
time.
point. All right, one sec, Devin. Here's the point, dude. this is the crux of it all. Like, it all hinges on this. So therefore, it's probably worthy of actually getting to the bottom of this. And I've not seen that been done on any live, and I think it's worthy of, bringing up these points and actually discussing them. That's why
definitely worthy bringing up over and over again. Definitely worthy.
We have not had this same discussion about whether who the actual successor
we did a month ago.
Peter is.
We
talked about this
we
exact
actually
same
have.
thing.
We talked about this on your live. We've talked about this on my live. I mean, the last live that we had, and again, this was like just 3 weeks ago. Okay, and it's up on my YouTube channel. I uploaded it on the 6th. Where we were talking about what the manuscripts say, and whether, and honestly, some of it was actually even this very topic about whether or not the bishops were the successors to the apostles. And so you even brought up Galatians 1:8, which was part of our very first conversation. And so it just seems like we're rehashing the same things over and over and over again. And this is why, like, I and several others, and even people who are commenting, even Catholics, are saying that you're not even presenting good, coherent arguments anymore. That you're just saying the same things over and over.
Okay, when did we talk about Linus, whether Linus was the actual successor to Peter?
It would have been on your live.
Exactly.
Henry was even in the live with us that last time.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the fact
ago.
that we talk about different parts of the topic about whether the Catholic Church apostatized. That is a broad topic, but we're talking about something more narrow than that. Like right now, we're talking about who the actual successor to Peter was. If you guys don't,
and we have talked about that before. The fact
that's
that you
fine, man. I mean, you've got 14 people on your live, man. If you want to talk about something else,
when we were originally talking about it on the live just 3 weeks ago, there were actually close to 100.
I think this is the middle of the day. It's hitting like a sensitive chord within you. I'm not trying to like.
Bro, chill out, Mr. 6 followers. Relax.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
What happened to your other account, by the way, GoodTimes?
I was getting doxxed by some Muslims, man. They were putting death threats on me, and yeah. So that was
nice. Yeah. You tend to do that. Okay, real quick. I'm trying to find this, man. I'm just gonna look it up here. I found where it's at. It's called Prescriptions Against Heresy. This is what it is. Prescription. That's a clever freaking title.
Prescription Against Heretics 32, right?
Oh, Heretics, yeah, 32.
Yeah.
So
he quotes that Rome makes Clement to have been ordained by Peter. So, but he doesn't say that Clement immediately succeeded Peter. That's the argument, basically.
But then what's he being ordained to?
Well, he's being ordained to the seat of Peter. So it's like Clement, the way Tertullian is saying it is that like every successor of Peter is ordained by Peter. It's like yeah.
But who would be? I feel like that's a very interesting thing though, because wouldn't it be that the Bishop of Rome would have to ordain his next successor then? But currently, it's all voted on who the next successor or who the next pope would be that sits in the seat of Peter. It's not the Pope itself who chooses his successor anymore. It's now by vote.
That's an interesting point, and that's a different topic which we can turn to, which is that, right? I mean, if the popes die, how are they supposed to then, pass their succession, pass their keys, right? So then, if all the other bishops vote for a successor of that pope, who else is going to do it? I mean, that's kind of a...
Yeah, I don't think but it's not bishops though, is it? It's cardinals isn't it cardinals that vote on the next pope? So it's not even the bishops. Like what office does a cardinal have to choose who the next bishop would be?
Cardinals are basically elevated bishops, essentially.
Yeah, they're the highest position in the church, basically, other than the pope. So it's, I mean...
So wait. Can you... I get that. So where is the concept of cardinals? When does that start being instituted amongst the lineage of the popes? When do we start seeing a council of cardinals vote in the popes.
Yeah, instead of
Because it seems it seems for the first 4 or 5 bishops, I can't remember, I think it's 4. It seems like for like the first 4 bishops, it seems as they claim some sort of succession from an apostle, usually Peter and Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like I think that's a deep, convoluted history of how this all happened. Like, I don't think it's as clean as like Peter passed it to Linus, and then all of a sudden it switched to Cardinals. I think it's like a kind of a blur of the bishops of Rome working together with other clergy, like with Paul, for example. Or if they pass away, then the other high up bishops or cardinals need to do that action because the Pope is no longer there, so he can't do it.
So, do you know when this specific calling of a cardinal like started being instituted, though? Because like it would have had to have, there would have had to have been some sort of gap until they started instituted cardinals, or these archbishops, right? And they're like archbishops or whatever is what they call them, right?
Yeah, I think it was
Cardinals?
like in the latter millennium, like the second.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
so then that draws the question: who's deciding who the Pope is for all those centuries before?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting argument, man. I've never heard that, but I think like that's actually a very interesting point. So, right. I'm just looking it up right now. It looks like Pope Nicholas II issued in a Nomine Domini, which gave the principal role in papal elections to the cardinal bishops. This is usually considered the formal beginning of the cardinal-centered election system in 1059. So then it like further kind of was clarified in other councils. But
so it doesn't look like the office of cardinal existed prior to the 6th century.
Well, cardinal is just bishops, like you said, Line. It's just like a.
But it's a special office, correct? Like you wouldn't say that every bishop is a cardinal, correct?
Correct. I wouldn't say every bishop is a cardinal, but they're all bishops.
And so that for me, that would just be the question of like, okay, then who'd you say Pope who you were just reading?
Nicholas II.
Okay, Pope Nicholas. Okay, so what's the history of Pope Nicholas and him like being ordained the Bishop of Rome prior to 1059? And that would be the questionable aspect of it, because then the apostolic lineage thing, for us, like this is just would be like our position, right? Of like why we would have issue. It's like, then it would be unclear how the succession functioned unilaterally. Gosh, I can't even talk. Yeah. So I can't even talk. Sorry. But that's something that I would just question, because then something had to have shifted where, I mean, I'm just saying, like, clearly you don't believe this, but like at least our line of succession, our claim of our line of succession is that, obviously it came from Peter, James, and John themselves, and that they came up with a formal attribute. You had obviously the succession crisis early in the church, but they came to realize in a universal way, I would suppose, by understanding the scriptures, that when the quorum comes together and they made a vote, at least that aspect of a successor or a calling of a successor is at least consistent with how the apostles did it biblically. So despite the fact that there was, okay, well, do we actually pull the successor from the Council of the 50, or do we pull the successor from the Council of the First Presidency? Do we pull there was all these different arguments going on within our history, but at least the way that they actually came to the conclusion actually lines up with like how they counseled together in the New Testament to resolve an issue. And that's honestly how it's laid out in D&C as well. I think D&C 107 says that everything must be agreed upon by the brethren of the quorum of the 12, but not even the quorum of the 12, but also the 70. And the reason why I say that is because Acts 15 mentions elders that are there, but it doesn't clarify like that if they're bishops or what type of elders they are in regards to their ecclesiastical authority position, right? But my point would be that if I'm to apply our theology, and I'm completely conceding that I'm applying our theology to this, that I would argue the 70 that Jesus or that Peter said or Jesus called for others to go anoint and set apart were the 70 that were there at Acts 15's council. And for me, if I apply my theology, once again, completely conceding this, to that scripture in the New Testament, then it is consistent with those other elders there being the 70, the quorum of the 70 that we would say are necessary to be a part of that discussion of calling,
Yeah,
or
it's
you
like
know, bringing new revelation or something like that.
I think
Sustaining
you're
that.
you're referring to like the 72 in Luke 10, right? And so though it never says like those 70, it just says Jesus appointed the 72 others and sent them on ahead of him, but it doesn't say that he set them apart as like bishops to be making these.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's fine.
I agree. Like I'm not saying he set them apart as bishops. I'm saying he set them apart as people who were to be sent, right? Doesn't he say like something similar to like for them to go to be sent out or something like that? I can't.
Yeah, exactly. It says that he sent them.
What he says.
Sent them on ahead of him. So I guess here's the argument to your point, Henry, which is that yes, when the bishop dies, let's say that he didn't. I mean, when the pope dies, if he didn't choose a successor, he's already given his authority to the higher level clergy, and in this case, the cardinals, following the 11th century, to make the decision on his behalf. So there's no like improper use of the keys. Like that authority was implicitly or explicitly given by the Pope while he was alive. Yeah, go ahead, Lion's looking like, what the heck are you talking about?
Yeah, the whole implicit thing, I think why would it need to be implicit when every other instant has been explicit though? That's the issue that I'm coming across.
Well, it wasn't ever explicit as far as I'm aware in terms of like if Peter and Paul chose Linus, as is the argument that Catholics would make, right? It wasn't ever explicit that Linus needed to choose a specific successor prior to his death, and that he could not have given the authority to other folks within the church to make that decision if he died suddenly. And that's what you see in history later on after Linus. You don't see that with Linus, obviously, but you see it, with other popes that because people
you don't see it with Clement either, though. You agree, right?
Yeah.
Oh, with Clement,
so at least the first three popes, you don't see the concept of
that's
right.
That's right. I think that Peter and Paul specifically selected Linus, and I believe Linus specifically selected Cletus, and then Cletus Clement. I don't know about after that, but I would suspect that there were some popes that died suddenly, and they, would not have expected the church to just die. They probably would have, expected that the other bishops would have chosen a successor for the keys to go to.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, because but glad we agree the church died.
Here's kind of the question though. Like when was Peter declared the bishop of Rome?
Yeah.
When Rome wasn't the seat of the church.
That is okay. This is a great question because this is where this is like the Orthodox argument, right? They claim that Peter was never, or he established his seat in a different location first, right? So
historically, the church was seated in Jerusalem.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, real quick. That passage that I was reading from Bart Ehrman earlier said that he gave a list of people, but he said there were other churches that tried to claim that Peter established their church in order to build off of that same thing, that the same authoritative structure of why the church in Rome is superior. So like I'll have to go back and read it, but I was just reading that a second ago on the thing, which makes it unclear. And he says that once people realized that he mentioned that once people realized that Peter was the chief apostle, the sooner that they could establish some sort of authoritative position, they did.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very fundamental argument, and you can make the argument that Peter never had the sole authority, that it was with the other apostles equally, and that Peter established his seat in a different location, so it never actually flowed from Rome. But I would argue that the scripture seems to make clear, to me at least, and a lot of people obviously in the world.
Well, which scripture would you be referring to?
Yeah, Matthew 16. So the biggest Christian denomination believes
so
that.
Matthew 16 states that the seat of the church is to be in Rome.
No, it says that the seat of the church is with Peter. So wherever Peter goes, that's where the church.
Okay, so here's the problem is that
statement you just made.
No, it wouldn't.
Right.
No,
So here's the problem is that there's no evidence that Peter was ever really in Rome until his crucifixion.
Also, real quick, the tradition, this is interesting, GoodTimes, and I was reading this earlier because I've been reading a lot of of just extra literature that are not canonized and stuff like that, apocryphal literature. Like the story of Peter being in Rome is very interesting, and people say is very almost unbelievable, because the narrative in the Acts of Peter, where you get this historical understanding of how Peter met his martyrdom, which is through crucifixion upside down. This is where Origen gets it, and this is where Eusebius gets it from Origen, I don't know. He's getting it from other people's writings, and so the thing is that it's coming from an earlier oral tradition of how he met his end. But in the Acts of Peter, the issues that, one, it's not canonized by the church, but yet the tradition is still held that he was crucified upside down in Rome. But when you read the story of Acts of Peter, it is well known why the church didn't really canonize it. And it's because, one, although it describes the death of Peter, and they hold to that, the aspects of the author and the writing description of what's going on and what is happening and what is in Rome is very off. Like, they don't know what Rome constitutes, what happens in Rome, and it's pretty explicit within that Acts of Peter.
Yeah,
it's one of the biggest arguments against it.
I've heard. I know a lot of historians say that Peter was not in Rome for very long prior to his crucifixion. I think that there are a lot of historians that say he was, and obviously the church says that he was there for like 25 years. The history is not super clear because there's not great documentation, but I would contend this: regardless of how long he was there for, he holds the keys. So if he's there at the end of his life and he passes on his keys to a successor that is in Rome, then there is the authority. The authority goes from person to person. Do you see what I'm saying?
The problem is that, like, again, just looking at like the writings of the apostles, like there's nothing to indicate that there's meant to be a magisterial bishop either. And so that's something that is very head scratching to me. So not only do we not see at least Peter declaring that the seat of the church was meant to be in Rome, unless you're trying to make the claim that because he was crucified there, because that's where he met his end, that's where the seat of the church was meant to be, then it maybe. But the thing is that again goes against what they did and the historical information that we have available.
I guess I'm just trying to bring it back to my point, which is that if Peter holds the keys, and do we even disagree on that? I think we both agree on that, right?
No, we agree.
No, we would agree.
He holds keys. Yeah, of course. I mean, he holds keys where he's able to preside amongst the entire church. Not just with himself. He's the chief apostle of the rest of the apostles.
Yes.
I mean, I say there's a historical ambiguity with that. Like, I know that's what my faith teaches, right? That's what the stance of the Latter-day Saint Church, that chief was the chief apostle. But even within like the early Christian history, it's debated whether or not it was Peter or if it was James, because there's a lot of early Christian literature that depict James as the head of the apostle and not actually Peter. And James Tabor breaks that down in a whole book in regards to.
But we could go down that rabbit hole, but I thought we all agree that Peter is the chief apostle. If not, we
do. We do. But what I'm saying is that the authority that he has, though, is shared amongst the quorum of the 12. So he's the chief. Okay. He's the chief of the quorum of the 12. Like, he's the one authorized basically
to exercise the keys until
he's the spokesman. Away. Yeah.
Wait. So don't we agree on that? Like, we agree that the other apostles have power by way of the keys, by way of Peter's keys. They have the power to bind and loose.
No. they have access to all the keys. They have access to all the keys in like universally. They have access to all the keys, so they have access to the same power, to the same authority. The only issue is that the Peter is put as the spokesman for the quorum. He's put in, yes, a little higher regard, but he's also not supposed to go against the quorum. Like he can't.
Okay,
Like for instance,
I disagree. I disagree because the only person that actually received the keys is Peter. The other apostles received the power to bind and loose, which is a
and
power
I would say,
of the keys, but
I would say, yeah, perfect, yeah, and I get that. I would disagree because there are church fathers. Well, I mean that's fine, but there are church fathers that also indicate and question Peter, whether or not Peter was only given the keys or whether the rest of the apostles were already also given the keys. And there are church fathers that indicate that no, it wasn't just Peter, that would make no sense. Because then under what authority are they operating under? And what authority does James have to say, I stamp and I finish and I declare this or whatever at the end of the council if Peter's the one that holds the keys? You know what I mean?
I'm sorry, the last
There's
part you said why. So, yeah, I know there's a whole division of arguments, but I cannot get past the main argument that like Jesus gives Peter the keys and he doesn't give that to anyone else. Like it's nowhere else in the scripture. The Orthodox's entire system is based on, go ahead.
Yeah, no. Like I agree that Peter is deliberately told that the keys of the kingdom will be given to him, but the people that are also with him and that are sharing in that enlightenment that he gets from Revelation on where are they at? Matthew 16. I'm trying to think about. They're on some mount. I can't remember the context, but they're universally. He's universally there, and Jesus is speaking to all of them too. He singles out Peter for his revelation, of course, because Peter finally comes to the understanding of what the rest of the apostles didn't understand, which was that Jesus was the Son of God and the Messiah, correct?
Yeah, but he singles out Peter for that, but he also singles out Peter to give him the actual keys. That is a reference to Isaiah that is supposed to mean all of the authority over the entire church. So he does give the other apostles that are with him the power to bind and loose, which is one of the powers of the keys, and it is granted through the keys, meaning you can't use that power if the key holder takes that away from you.
That's fine. Yeah, and I agree. So I'm going to ask you this question: Why then does Peter, who has a very big ego, throughout the New Testament, and is pretty well known, why does he feel the need to not exercise his authority in the position that you're saying that he has, and why does he feel the need to counsel together with the rest of the apostles to make a decision on something that he inherently would not disagree with? Because he was at first, the whole issue with him and Paul, and the dispute with him and Paul, was that Peter had no issue with the Judaizers. Like the whole issue came when Paul came to him and the rest of the apostles saying like, hey, this is not good. And then Peter basically backed out saying, oh, we didn't teach them this. We didn't teach them this. And then Galatians 2, he's being hypocrites when it comes to the Gentiles, and then acting all cool with the Gentiles, and then leaving them, and then acting as if they're unclean, and he wants to keep himself away from them. And Paul calls them out. So like, what's this?
Peter is not this like divine figure on earth. Like Peter rejected Christ 3 times. Okay, like he's not a perfect man. He's just the key holder elected by Christ. So is he going to be right in every case? Not unless he's making a decision ex cathedra with the power of the keys. So
that's a post-biblical concept.
Can you present to me points throughout the New Testament when ex cathedra is being articulated, or I guess you could say being utilized? That's the concept of it.
That the concept of when Jesus is, quote, the word, if he uses the word whatever, which means anything you say will, that you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. So that is an infallible ability that he gives to Peter to use under the authority of the
right, but wouldn't be Paul? Hold on, wait. Because Henry brought up something very, very poignant about how Paul called him out. is it appropriate for any one of the cardinals or any of the bishops to call out the current pontiff today?
It
Like
happens. It happens.
if
The Pope says things that are corrected. The use of the ex cathedra infallible ability is extremely rare. It's like so rare that it's remarkable. So yeah, it happens all the time. The popes don't claim to be like, oh, I'm this like wizard,
but the
This
thing is,
thing.
but what typically happens when someone openly criticizes the Pope? Like
Well,
when one of the cardinals openly
yeah,
criticizes the Pope.
if they're okay, that's a good question, Lion. Like if your point is that sometimes they're like told to be quiet or they get reprimanded, that is true sometimes. But
Well, they're often threatened with they're at least threatened with
Wait.
excommunication, though.
Also, wait, real quick. Let's make sure we're drawing the distinction, though. Like, so good times. Make sure we're drawing the distinction. This isn't just ordinary members of the Catholic Church. We're talking about high calling leadership rebuking the Pope and their position.
yeah, that's sometimes does happen where some bishops disagree with the Pope. Sometimes they're excommunicated because they're and that's the excommunication is the power of the keys. That's why he says you can close the gate on them. That's what's happening. So
Okay,
that does
so
happen.
so if Paul did that, then wouldn't he be subject to the same type of discipline?
That discipline
Because
is
that's
not.
exactly the same type of thing. Like that, Paul
Yeah,
also being an apostle is basically openly condemning and rebuking Peter, who is supposedly the supreme head of the church on earth.
yes, you can rebuke the Pope, and it's not every instance that the Pope is going to exercise his excommunication ability. It's just that if if you're acting in total disaccordance with the church's ideals and teachings, then yeah. But like Paul happened to be right
But if
on
Peter
situations.
is fraternizing with the Judaizers
Yeah,
and saying that there's nothing wrong with what they're doing, and then Paul comes around, also as an apostle. So in this case, this would be like a cardinal actively rebuking Pope Leo,
yeah, absolutely.
like
And
publicly, like he's going in front of the press and saying Pope Leo is out of line. He's basically committing heresy against the church.
there have been bishops that have publicly reprimanded the Pope and not been excommunicated. It's just an ability that the Pope can use.
Can you give me? Hold on, wait. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Good times. While we're talking about this, can you give us some examples of where that happens, or where that has happened, and they didn't face any sort of consequences or
Yes.
anything like that? Because like the thing is that Peter looked within, and Peter seeked after or I mean, I guess you could say he sought the purpose of why he was being reprimanded, and then they eventually called a council. He didn't immediately try to rebuke Paul and say like, "Oh, you're below me. You're trying to challenge my authority." Yada yada yada. He didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many examples of this throughout history. Like, I'm just trying to think about one that's like, I don't know. A lot of them go back to earlier on in history, but there's many times that bishops.
Well, we gotta make sure that it's during the time where it is clear. Like for instance, I would say that find an example after, was it Pope Leo makes it clear that the Bishop of Rome is the sole superior authority of the church, which is like, I think what's around the time of the schism, no? Or is that right before the schism? No, that's like 5th century, right? Is that 5th century?
It was the Catholic Church has always held that they have that authority, but then it's been clarified throughout history, and they probably made very, very explicitly clear in like the latter like millennium, I would think.
Well, that's what I'm saying, where it's made explicitly clear, because in the latter millennium, because to be fair, no bishop that deems themselves as part of the Orthodox Church would say that claim was explicitly known until it was deliberately said that the Bishop of Rome holds universal authority over the entire church, which was later articulated in like the later millennium for sure. I know it was.
It just has to be, because if you look at what the keys are, it's the only reference to keys prior to Matthew 16 is in Isaiah 21. So it has to be
that's
that.
the implication.
Yeah.
Because so for instance, would you say that Peter being revered as a pillar is an implication of his authority.
No, that's just, I mean, that's an implication of authority, but not like just being called a pillar doesn't mean that you're infallible. What's infallible is the direct words of Jesus when he says, "This, I give you the keys," and then you look up what the keys are, and it says, "Oh, the keys mean you have entire power over the entire church. You have every power over the entire church on earth."
Okay, but that's not. Hold on, Matthew 18:18. The rest of the apostles are
Matthew
given
16.
the keys.
Matthew 16. No, they're not. No,
Matthew 18:18. Hold on.
No, they're not
see.
given the keys in Matthew 18. Like they're not given the keys. Only Peter is given the keys. That's a common misunderstanding. No, they're not. If you want to read Matthew 18 out of obscurity, they're not given the keys.
Well, I'm going to see what it says.
It says they're given the power to bind and loose. It's not the keys. The keys are a...
Well, what's the power to bind and loose? Because when you read explicitly, when you read Matthew 16:18, it says, "I will give you the keys," and then what does he say following after that? Those keys will do what?
He doesn't say those keys will do what. He says, "I give you the keys and the power to bind and loose." So the keys...
Let's actually see what it says.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay.
Let's go to the... Real quick.
Let's see.
So
Matthew
whatever you bind on
16:19.
earth, you will be bound in.
Yeah. Matthew 16:19.
Go ahead.
I'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven.
Yeah.
This seems like it's directly connected to the keys, grammatically speaking.
Yeah. I don't see a comp.
It's a power of the keys. That is what it is. So if you go to Isaiah...
So the keys are the power to bind and loose on earth and heaven.
No,
and then
it's
in Matthew 18...
No, it's not. It's not.
Hold on, guys.
Hold on. And in Matthew 18...
Guys,
hold on, guys. Don't speak over each other.
Matthew 18:18. Hold on, good man. Hold on. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So this is the same thing that Jesus tells Peter in Matthew 16. This is the function of the keys.
Can you make my screen bigger? Because this is like the biggest misconception in all of Christianity. Like, I understand where you're coming from, because if you just read that, and that's why a lot of Orthodox make your same argument, Lion. You would think that, the keys of the kingdom of heaven, whatever you bind on earth will be bound. So it must be the keys just mean the power to bind and loose. Therefore, all the other apostles get the keys. But we need to understand what the heck he's referring to here. He's the kingdom of heaven. So let's look at Isaiah 22 to see what Jesus is referencing, because he's making a reference to Isaiah specifically. And he says, I'm sure you're familiar with this, Lion. I'm trying to find the exact key. One sec. I think it's Isaiah 20:22. It says, "I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David." So that's what the key to the kingdom of heaven. Obviously, we know that the house of David, a fulfilled house of David, is the kingdom of heaven.
That's the tribe of Judah. That's the tribe of Judah specifically.
Okay, so what he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. And I will drive him like a peg into a firm place. He will become a seat of honor for the house of his father. All of the glory of his family will hang on him, and his offspring and offshoots, all of his lesser vessels. And it says above here in 21, "I will clothe him with your robe and fasten your sash around him and hand your authority over to him." And then it says, let's see, depose from your office, summon my servant, clothe, and he will be a father into the people of Judah. I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David. What he opens, no one can shut. What he shuts, no one can open. I'll drive him like a peg into a firm place. He'll become a seat of honor for the house of his father. All of his glory of his family will hang on him, his offspring, his offshoots. So, this is what it's referencing. This is what the key to the kingdom of heaven that's being given to Peter. It's that
the problem is that Isaiah is not referencing the key to the kingdom of heaven. It's referencing the key to the house of David.
Because at the time, the key to the kingdom of heaven did not exist. The key to the house of David is the prefiguration of the kingdom of heaven.
That's fine. I'm going to say this real quick, because I just read chapter 18, and it's indicating the rest of the apostles, obviously, when it comes to the binding and sealing and stuff like that. But you're saying that it's separate from what the keys deliberately being given to Peter. Would you say, when you have the authority on earth to forgive and to not forgive sin, to bind and to seal things in heaven and not in heaven, are you doing that without the authority of something given to you to be able to make deliberate decisions like that for heaven?
No, you are. So let me just finish my explanation and it'll make sense. So
Okay.
basically, in Isaiah 21, the former palace administrator got removed and was replaced. And then basically, this is while the king is gone. There's like a palace administrator. Okay. So Jesus is the king. Peter's the new palace administrator. He gets the key. This is an office of one person. It's the key to the entire house of David. So you are the final say. What you open, no one can shut, etc. What you shut, no one can open. This is given to Peter. Then, following that, the other apostles get this power to bind and loose, but they don't explicitly get the key. Therefore, the implication is that they get their power in a jurisdictional sense, subject to the key holder, just as when there's a palace administrator, there would also be other administrators of the kingdom that would have their authoritative power, but it would always be subject to this one person that is the Father, and that's where we get the word Pope from. It says,
Okay. Wait. Okay.
yeah,
I get that. So here's my counter argument. So we would say that that's one explicitly referring to the Messiah. Would you say that's a messianic prophecy? Yes or no? In reference to the king, because you literally said it's referencing the king of Judah or the king of Israel, right? King of
yeah,
Judah.
yeah. Well, the king is Jesus for sure. Yes, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, perfect. I want to say this with all due respect because
okay.
there's a Jewish context behind this, and I'm going to explain this Jewish context. Who are the ones that were appointed judges and rulers in Israel before the New Testament?
Can you say that again?
Who were the people put in charge as rulers and judges for Israel before the New Testament, before the New Covenant? Sorry, let me be more explicit.
Well, there were kings, and there were. Are you referring to the kings that were set up?
Specifically after Sinai, because the king himself did not commence judgment; he left it to the Sanhedrin, to the people that on Mount Sinai Moses said and appointed as judges and rulers over Israel. And he says, like, you shall make fringes on your garments, and he gave them a whole bunch of rules, and it was from the line of Aaron that their descendants would fall into this priesthood and authority, yada yada yada. And this is the issue. And I see what Isaiah is saying, because Isaiah is referencing a different type of authority that somebody from this line of Judah will have. And it's tied into the Melchizedek priesthood. And I'll show you how it's tied in. So with this reference point, in Jewish tradition, and Jewish people know this, when the Messiah comes, he will have a sort of authority that is going to supersede the Sanhedrin. That his authority and his knowledge of the Torah will be greater than those that are scholars of the Torah, which are basically the rabbis and those that are appointed, the 70 members of the Sanhedrin. And so when this happens, they're not going to be, it's prophesied that they're going to reject him because, one, they've broken the covenant, which they did, if you understand the Second Temple period understanding. The people that were appointed into power of those seats were not appointed through the practice that they were supposed to be appointed from. It was through political position. They were positioned in that state of authority, or that position of authority by the Roman government. And so because of this, Matthew 23, Jesus says that they have become greedy. They have become people that are not judging correctly. That you guys look at or live for the precepts of the law, worrying about how long the fringes of your garments are and how clean the outside of your cup looks, and yada yada yada. He does all this judgment according to them. And what the Pharisees are very pissed off about is that Jesus is proclaiming authority above them, claiming to be the Son of Man. They know that whoever the Son of Man is, when he comes, their authority will cease. Their priesthood will cease. But here's the thing. When Jesus does come and he establishes that he's the Messiah and all this stuff, what he does away with is the Sanhedrin, is their authority, and he implements this new authority that comes from the line of Judah. Because you're familiar with this good news, I'm pretty sure, that when Abraham went to Salem, which is modern day Jerusalem, he went and he met and paid tithes to who?
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek, right? And Melchizedek is the king of Salem and the high priest of Salem, and he is said to be the high priest of the Most High God. Correct?
Correct.
But at the same time, Melchizedek is not a Jew. He's not an Israelite, is he?
Well, he's a follower of God, but he's not an Israelite. No.
But he's not an Israelite, right? But he's getting paid. He's being paid tithes to, and he's being paid tithes to by Abraham, who is an Israelite of the God Yahweh and all this stuff. And he is made a high priest, and so under his authority,
Is Abraham an Israelite, by the way? I don't know.
Abraham would have been referred to as an Israelite or a Hebrew. You can call him a Hebrew, but Genesis, Canaanite, Hebrew.
He pre-existed Israel. That's why.
Yeah, he pre-existed Israel, but there's in Genesis, the modern translations through the Masoretic text calls them Israelites. So I mean, it doesn't call them Canaanites or anything like that, especially in the Exodus narrative. But when I say this because of this. The Jewish understanding is that there is a different priesthood, or there's a different sense of authority that will come, and when it comes, their line of authority will cease underneath this person's authority, which we understand to be Jesus. Correct?
I think the king still had authority over the Sadducees and Pharisees. So
he didn't. Not when it came to instituting the law. Can you show me anywhere throughout history, Jewish history, where the king cast judgment and did not leave it to the Sanhedrin? Because according to the Torah, if he did that and he cast judgment, that goes against the Torah, and the penalty is death.
Where in the Torah does it go against? Where does it say in the Torah that the king
go and when you go to Exodus 1, there is no king in the time of Exodus.
Right.
Correct.
All
right, and so in the time of Exodus, the people that are set up as the ruling authorities are who? The sons of Aaron, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. When it comes to the king of Israel being anointed, and so they're still under the Mosaic law, correct?
Yes.
The king? Okay. So if the king is under the Mosaic law, who is judgment held by? Is it held by the Sanhedrin, or is it held by the king of Israel?
I think the king has overall authority. He has the highest level of authority.
Okay. Where does that indication in Kings, or I think Samuel, it mentions Kings, but where does it indicate that the king cast judgment of the Torah to the people and not the Sanhedrin? Can you give me an example where the king does that?
Yeah, I can. I don't think you have to find an example of the king passing judgment to show that he has authority. So
no. You said, because this is the argument that you're presenting, good times, is that you're saying that the king's authority supersedes the Sanhedrin's authority, correct?
I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, the king has overall authority over the Sanhedrin. Yes, 100%.
Okay. Where does it say that?
Where does it? I guess I can try to find it, but where does it not say that?
I don't have to prove a negative.
Well, you're the one that's making the argument that the Sanhedrin overrules the king. So where's the argument?
Yeah, because I'm not saying, well, the Sanhedrin, according to the Torah, has authority over how they judge according to the Torah, not the king. There's nowhere in the Torah that indicates that the king has authority over the Sanhedrin when it comes to casting judgment, when it comes to interpreting the law and doing that. There's a whole system set up way before the king of Israel comes into play. But you're indicating that the king does have such authority. Well, there must be a biblical basis behind that and examples behind that. I don't have to prove the negative. That's not how debate works.
No, I think you're making the affirmative claim that the Sanhedrin has overall authority over the king. So I think you would have to be responsible.
When it comes,
you made the claim
Torah,
that the king has absolute authority over the Sanhedrin. So that's a positive claim.
So
now you have the burden.
And hold on, wait, guys,
over the king.
Already made my explicit claim clear. The Sanhedrin, if they are underneath the law, and the king of Israel is underneath the law, if they are following the law, then the king is subject to the court. the king is still subject to the court, which is the Sanhedrin.
Well, everyone, the king is subject to the law. That's right. But the king is not subject to
He's subject to, he is. When it comes to judgment according to the law, he's subject to the Sanhedrin, because they are the ones, according to the Torah, that cast judgment according to the law. So you would have to find a basis, because that supports my claim, because the king of Israel obviously falls under the law of Moses, and that there's no indication that he doesn't fall under the law of Moses. So you would have to find me in scripture where he supersedes or transcends the court.
He does not supersede or transcend the law. No one transcends the law. So if the court is acting in the capacity of the court to
cast judgment, correct?
We have a Supreme Court. If they're doing so in concordance with the law, then yes, the law supersedes the king. Absolutely. But I would not say that.
I would say that the king has authority to guide the nation of Israel, but when it comes to casting judgment or judgment for justice or whatever, when you're implying that a law is being broken or something like that, that is outside the jurisdiction and authority of the king. That is all within the hands of the Sanhedrin, because they are appointed by God himself, because that's what they would say. The Jewish people would say the Torah is the only living scripture of God, like the secondary scripture or inspiration is the prophets, but they would judge according to the Torah. And so that the divine position of the Sanhedrin would supersede, according to the law, the king of Israel.
No, the Sanhedrin don't have more authority than the king. The king has more authority, but they all are under the law. So if the Sanhedrin is making a judgment in concordance with the law, with respect to the king, I have no problem with that. So I think we agree.
So
the issue is I do have to go in 3 minutes, man. So I guess
you're fine. I do too.
Point here?
Yeah. So my overall point is that when Jesus came, he came with that priesthood that was not a lineage priesthood. The priesthood of Melchizedek did not fall under the Israelite lineage. The tithings and the respect being paid to this person who is not an Israelite, Hebrew, or Canaanite, or whatever, there's no indication of anything. He seems to just randomly appear in the scriptures as some mighty figure who is conflated with Jesus later on. That this priesthood is not limited to this lineage anymore, which shows why Jesus was able to appoint people that were not of the sons of Levi, who are from the tribe of Judah, into this leadership authority where they now cast judgment. They now say what is bound in heaven and loosed in heaven is correct on their basis, but is a delegation of authority from Jesus. You agree, correct?
I mean, honestly, man, I'm so sorry to say this, but I have to go. What is the point here? Because we were talking about whether Jesus is the king in relation to giving power to Peter. So, are you still there?
Yeah, is that power. That power. Yeah.
You're breaking up a little bit. You're breaking up.
You're losing signal, Henry.
Frick.
Dang it! I really wanted to hear where.
I think you're kind of back,
or no.
Yeah, that's better.
That's better.
Am I kind of back or no? Okay.
Yeah,
I just stopped. I just stopped right here. So basically, let me just say this. So the authority given to make judgments on behalf of heaven was given by being able to judge according to the law and to forgive and to not forgive. And that is given to the apostles, not just Peter. And that's what the key is to be able to cast judgment on behalf of heaven. So my argument would be that just how the court in the Old Testament had a high priest, someone delegated from the court, Peter is that delegated high apostle of the court, but they all cast judgment. They all have that authority to do the things.
I gotcha. Yeah,
to be able to cast it, and so that's what my argument would be.
Interesting argument. I like the creativity there. I would just say that in Isaiah 22, it's not given to a court of people. The key, the house of David, is given to one person. So I just don't see the analog to that. I don't think it says anything about the ability to forgive means you have power. It just says that it's given to one person, and that person has authority over the entire house of David. So if Jesus is referencing
that wouldn't be Peter either, because the power isn't Peter's, is it? It's Jesus's power, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Jesus' power given to Peter, just as in Isaiah 22, it's God's power given to Eliakim.
So do you agree that that's two people?
Yeah, just as in Isaiah 22, it's God's power given to Eliakim.
The problem with that is that Revelation 3 claims that Jesus is the one who has the key to the house of David in particular.
He does. He is the key holder to the house of David. But he gives it to Peter while he is not on earth.
No.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But here's the thing: that you do agree that delegation of authority is not only given to one. It's not solely given to one individual, or at least it's not constrained down to being able to be given to one person. Correct?
Well, the other apostles are also given and delegated authority, but their authority is subject to the key holder, just as in Isaiah 22.
Okay, hold on, wait. The key holder what I'm saying is that the key holder is Jesus. Jesus is delegating keys.
Okay, just as in Isaiah 22, the Lord is the key holder and delegates his key to Eliakim on earth while he is out of the kingdom. Just as in when Jesus leaves the kingdom, Peter is the holder of the key. This is why Jesus can only be referencing Isaiah 22, and Revelation was written after Isaiah 22. So this is the entire key, no pun intended.
So it's being given to the king, right?
It's given to the palace administrator while the king is gone outside of the palace.
Oh, to the palace, yeah, but it's while the king is gone, it's a delegation of authority while the king is gone, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, but it's intended for the king, correct?
The king holds ultimate authority, so when he comes back, the palace administrator is overridden. Yeah.
So why is it that does a king, like, for instance, we're going to use Saul as an example. I know you got to go, and I got to go here in a second too as well. Yeah. But using this example with Saul, why is it that Samuel, he doesn't have authority to tell Samuel what to do?
Oh man. Why does Saul not have authority to tell Samuel what to do?
Yeah.
I would have to. I don't know. I think that's a conversation for another day. I think it's a good question.
Hey, just feel free to come back. I got to show up to another job as well.
But anyway, I wanted to say, Lion, thanks for being like cool and patient, man, for most of the live. And I don't want to pollute your live with repetitive conversations. I just think that this is like it's all about this. So. Feel free to take it somewhere else, man. But God bless you, and thanks for being cool and patient.
Have a good one.
Take care, dude.
All right, later, yes.
Later, man.
Bye.
Now, I, for one, am actually kind of grateful for that apology at the end. Hopefully that doesn't necessarily happen in the future whenever I do cross paths with him again, but, who knows.